They called him the light of the age, a preacher, a warrior, and a reformer. In the dusty plains of 18th century West Africa, one man rose from humble beginnings to challenge kings, topple dynasties, and build one of the greatest empires in African history, the Sokoto Caliphate. But how did Usman den Fodio, a quiet scholar from a small village, ignite a revolution that would reshape an entire region for centuries to come? This is the incredible story of how faith, conviction, and war built an empire that still echoes through time. Our story begins not on a battlefield, but in the quiet world of Islamic scholarship. Long before he was hailed as the commander of the faithful, Usman den Fodio was a young Fulani man born in 1754 in what is now northern Nigeria. He was a gifted student, deeply immersed in the teachings of Islam. He studied under the most renowned teachers of his time, quickly earning a reputation for his profound wisdom, piety, and devotion. But what set Usman apart wasn't just his knowledge, it was his unshakable conviction. He looked at the world around him and saw a society that had lost its way. The Hausa kingdoms of the era were plagued by corruption. Rulers imposed crushing taxes on the poor, justice was for sale, and many Islamic practices had been mixed with local traditions that Usman believed were impure. He saw a spiritual sickness, and he felt a divine calling to be the cure. So he began to preach. He didn't speak of power or glory, he spoke of simplicity, honesty, and a return to the pure, unadulterated roots of Islam. His message was radical in its simplicity. Rulers must serve their people with justice, and society must be governed by God's law. And the people, the farmers, the herders, the traders, the forgotten, they listened. Slowly at first, and then like a flood, a movement began to form around him. Students flocked to become his disciples, entire villages welcomed him as a spiritual guide, and his words spread like wildfire across the savannah. This growing influence didn't go unnoticed. The rulers of the most powerful Hausa state, Gobir, began to worry. The king Yunfa had once been a student of Usman and had admired his teacher. But as Usman's following swelled into the thousands, admiration curdled into fear, and fear into outright hostility. The ruling elite saw Usman not as a holy man, but as a threat. They accused him of plotting a rebellion, of trying to build a state within their state. The tension finally snapped. King Yunfa issued a decree. Usman was forbidden from preaching. His followers were ordered to abandon their distinctive turbans and veils, and the community was threatened with violence. The peaceful scholar was now at a crossroads. He could submit to the king's authority and betray his conscience, or he could stand firm for what he believed in, no matter the cost. For Usman, the choice was clear. He chose faith over fear. In a move that mirrored one of the most significant events in Islamic history, Usman declared a Hijra migration. Just as the Prophet Muhammad had migrated from Mecca to Medina to escape persecution and establish a new community, Usman led his followers out of Gobir into exile. Thousands abandoned their homes to join him, creating a new, independent community bound by faith. It was there in the wilderness that something historic happened in 1804. His followers gathered and proclaimed him Amir al-Mu'minin, the commander of the faithful. The scholar had become a leader. The pen was about to give way to the sword. The preacher was now a revolutionary. What started as a call for religious reform had just erupted into a full-blown war of jihad. From his new base, Usman called upon his followers to rise up against the unbelieving Hausa kings. His army was not one of professional soldiers. It was a coalition of his students, Fulani nomads who felt marginalized, and common people who were tired of oppression. They were united by a powerful, divine mission to purify the land, establish justice, and create a true Islamic state governed by Sharia law. They fought not merely for conquest, but for what they believed was righteousness itself. The war that followed was swift and decisive. The Fulani forces, fueled by religious zeal and brilliant military strategy, swept across the Hausa lands. Kingdom after kingdom fell. The powerful rulers who had once mocked the humble preacher were defeated and overthrown. Cities like Katsina, Kano, and Zaria, once the centers of Hausa power, were brought under the banner of the new caliphate. By 1808, the Sokoto Caliphate was born. It was a colossal empire, stretching across vast territories of modern-day Nigeria, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Cameroon. It was, at its height, the largest and most populous state in West Africa. But Usman den Fodio was never just a warrior. He was, first and foremost, a thinker, a nation-builder. With the fighting largely over, he turned his focus to the immense task of governing. He wasn't interested in the trappings of power. Instead, he laid down a blueprint for a state built on moral integrity, widespread education, and social justice. He authored over 100 books covering theology, law, poetry, and politics, creating the intellectual foundation for his new empire. He insisted that leaders must live humbly and avoid extravagance. He championed the education of women, a revolutionary idea at the time, arguing that an ignorant mother could not raise an enlightened child. He taught that corruption was the greatest enemy of any society, and that a ruler's legitimacy came only from his justice. After establishing the caliphate, Usman did something remarkable. Instead of clinging to power, he voluntarily stepped back from the day-to-day administration. He handed the political leadership to his son Muhammad Bello, and the military command to his brother Abdullahi. He returned to what he loved most: teaching, writing, and spiritual guidance. He sought not earthly glory but divine guidance. He was a conqueror who wanted nothing for himself. Usman den Fodio passed away in 1817. But his legacy was only just beginning. The Sokoto Caliphate he founded would thrive for nearly a century, becoming a major center of trade, scholarship, and Islamic culture. Its influence on religion, law, and politics would radiate across West Africa. And its administrative structure was so effective that later British colonizers would adopt parts of it to govern the region. Even today, the echoes of Usman den Fodio's vision still resonate powerfully. Especially in northern Nigeria, his life continues to shape discussions on faith, governance, and justice. The story of Usman den Fodio is more than just the history of a war. It's a timeless testament to the power of conviction. It's about how one man's unwavering belief could inspire a revolution, topple an old order, and build a new world from its ashes. From preacher to scholar, from exile to emperor, he proved that when faith burns bright enough, it can forge empires and leave a legacy that time cannot erase. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next journey into history. Let us know in the comments what other historical figures you'd like to see us cover. Until next time, stay curious.